Hello, everyone. So welcome back to the MHP Show. I have a very, very special guest with me today, Mr. Abraham Anderson of Capital Communities. So get this, Abraham owns 2,600 lots amongst 43 mobile home parks. This guy knows what he's talking about. And I'll tell you, Abraham was actually one of the reasons that I got started in mobile home parks because he had a podcast and I had listened to it. And he actually had a very concise and clear way of explaining things. And so, Abraham, I'm like, okay, Abraham, help me get started in mobile home parks. So welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Derek. I appreciate it. That means a lot. And, I've seen your tremendous success over the last several years is awesome. And it also shows, that this business, if you take the right steps, anybody can get it done. If we can do it, anyone can do it.
100%, 100%. And, the interesting thing, we had met at MHI and, we realized that we had a lot more in common as far as how we both started our entrepreneurship journey. So explain to me, tell us a little bit how you started and what was the first business you got into?
So I've been self-employed my entire life. And even before, I was 18, I would do little side businesses like me and my brother would go on the weekends, yard sailings, what we called it, different yard sales. And we would buy electronics, try to negotiate them down in price and sell them on eBay for a profit. So I've always been entrepreneurial minded. The first, actual job I had, which again, it was self-employed, was insurance, which I know you have an insurance background as well. And when I was turned 18, I got my insurance license and I was pretty successful in that. I loved with insurance is all about saving people money to me and meeting needs they had as far as coverage. And so that was the way I looked at it was, most of the time I wasn't even giving them a policy they didn't have, but saving the money on the insurance they already had for the same coverage. So that was always fun to me, meeting people, talking to them. And so I did that for several years simultaneously with doing real estate. But then now I've just been full time into mobile home parks and real estate the past about 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And I tell people like as many things that I didn't like about the insurance business and the way it was set up and all that, the skills that I learned in that business, how to pick up a phone, how to cold call somebody and build rapport with them was invaluable when I got into this business. And I'm sure it was the same for you, I would have to imagine.
Absolutely. It's all people skills, just being able to talk to people and being a good listener. And this is something that's hard to learn, but like I'm sincerely interested in people and I enjoy having conversations and hearing about their life and where they're coming from. So those skills, they really are good in any business, not just sales or in parks where you're buying, but really in any business, I think people skills are invaluable.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So insurance, you got your start in insurance. You had the cold call, you got beat up a little bit like I did. I think I still have some marks from that on my face myself. So let's talk about mobile home parks, trailer parks. Career day in high school, there was no mobile home park, trailer park operator there. There just wasn't. So how in the world did you find this crazy asset class of trailer parks?
It's funny because I often wonder that. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, man, is this all just a dream? Because I never would have imagined that. You're going to grow up and you're going to run a lot of trailer parks. That's what you're going to be in and out. Most of your days is in trailer parks. Like, really? So, how I got started in parks, I always knew I wanted to be in real estate, even before I did insurance. I had an older brother who had some rental houses. And then I had a friend whose dad was a developer and he had some rentals. And one thing my brother told me I always thought was cool is he said that if you just save up enough money to get a down payment on a property, then the renters pay the mortgage. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So when I turned 18 and started doing insurance, I'd saved up enough money. And before I turned 19, I was able to start the building of 4 townhomes. And I'd done that. Then I'd sold those and bought some apartments, 20-unit apartment building. And apartments were nice, but what always just killed me was I would work so hard. I'd get them fully occupied, all 20 people in there paying rent, and I'd have two people leave. And then I'd spend another, 7, 8 grand rehabbing those, get two more people in, and then another two people would leave. And it was just a constant churn and burn. And I was always aware of parks. And in fact, when I was a kid, my parents owned a mobile home in a mobile home park. And that was our like vacation home. It was up in the Smoky Mountains, and we'd go up there like one weekend a month. And I always had fond memories of that. But just the stigma you get of being in America, especially in the South, of trailer parks. In my mind, I was like, I don't want to own a trailer park. But just like I listened to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, and the more I looked at mobile home parks, I realized that the business model is a parking lot where they own their homes, and you're just renting the space to them. Issues I had with apartments, which were turnover and repair and maintenance, the two killers of cash flow. With mobile home parks, the average person that owns their home stays over 10 years. And even when they end up moving, they just sell their home to somebody else, and the money keeps coming. And then the repair and maintenance, you don't have to maintain their home when they own it. So once that hit me, I was like, okay, I'm focused on the wrong asset class. Real estate's the right idea, but I need to be full in on mobile home parks. So I end up buying some mobile home parks. And then a couple years ago, I even sold my apartments. And now I'm just fully into mobile home parks.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And that's how, it's interesting. Like same thing with me when I actually did more research on the asset class and really found out those same things that you just mentioned. Like that is what attracted me to this. I'm like, wow, I never owned apartments, but the fact of it acting as a parking lot was, the light bulb for me. So I want to go back. You said you bought a 20 unit apartment. So that was your first deal, correct?
Yeah, well, I'd done these 4 townhomes prior to that, and I made very little money. The plan was to build these and rent them out. And my same friend's dad, who was the developer, he was the guy I used to build them. Of course, it went over budget, took longer than it was supposed to. And then during this whole process, I ended up moving from near Chattanooga, Tennessee to Sevierville, Tennessee, which is near Knoxville. It's in the Smoky Mountain areas. And so at the time, I was scared to landlord long distance. So I ended up selling those and then buying these apartments. So that was really my first foray into rental properties, was this 20 unit apartment building.
Got it. And I know, people that are getting into the mobile home park space or real estate at that, they're always concerned about, hey, how in the heck am I going to get the down payment? How am I going to get this first chunk of money to put down on this property? And so I'd be curious to know, because I don't think, you didn't grow up in, this multi-billionaire family or anything like that. So how did you accomplish and how did you figure out how to do that?
Sure. Yeah. And it's funny, my parents, maybe I shouldn't, they wouldn't let me say this, but I've actually lent my parents money. So I've never gotten any money from any family members other than maybe $20 on my birthday when I was a kid. So when I was doing insurance, now one thing I was fortunate though is I did live with my parents until I was in my early 20s, and they didn't charge me any rent. They didn't really charge me for food either. So I took advantage of that for sure. And I was working when I was doing insurance. I was working, some weeks it would be 100 hours a week, 6 days a week. I would be grinding away, staying up late, waking up early. And you can do that. You get burned out pretty quick on that. But I saved everything. I didn't spend any money at all. Never, went out and partied, never really spent money on anything. It was all saving up, knowing that I want to get to the point where I can buy or invest some money where I don't have to work if I don't want to. So, and that is difficult, I know, for a lot of people, especially if you already have a family and things like that. But I would just recommend really looking at where your money's going, because it's not what you make every month, it's what you keep. And the first property is definitely the hardest, getting that first down payment. But if you can just, save and delay some big expense or whatever it is, delay some pleasure and save that money, get that property, it's going to be worth it 50 times over down the line. The second property is even easier, and then it just snowballs from there. So wherever you're at, just save money, or if you can find a way to make some extra money to get the money for the first down payment.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great advice. And I needed that advice when I was 20 or 21, because I did the partying. I spent money on dumb shit. All that stuff, right? And I'll tell you guys what Abraham is telling you. You need to listen to that. Heed that advice, because I think I made a post about this the other day, that partying and doing all that stuff that I did is a colossal waste of time, and it sets you back. And so Abraham was actually smart enough not to get wrapped up into that. So kudos to you for that. So moving on here, I want to talk about this first deal, because your first deal, I still own my first deal, and it was an experience, to say the least. So tell us about your first mobile home park deal, how you acquired it, and the hair that was on it, and how you got through that deal.
Sure. So my first deal was a 30 space park, and I found it, funny enough, because almost every deal after that has been from a cold call or some other way of contacting the owner directly. But this first one was a wholesale. I used to go, and I still do go, to a lot of real estate networking groups.
Mm-hmm.
And and if most of those, I mean, unless it's specific to parks, most of them are house flippers or, some people that like own apartments and things like that. But I would go to these, and I met this one guy, and he's like, "Hey, I've got a lead." And of course, every time I go to these, I would tell people, "Hey, I'm looking for mobile home parks. I have some apartments already, but I'm looking for parks. So if you know of any, let me know." And this one guy who's in apartments told me, "Hey, listen, I know this guy that's got some parks he's selling." So he put me in touch with him, and he had a 30 space park and then a 13 space park with a single family home, and ended up buying both of those after going back and forth on price and everything. And great parks. I still own both of them today. They're both in Knoxville, and the hair on both of them was they were majority park-owned homes. The good things going for them were they were both city utilities, direct build, which is awesome. Location was great. Of course, at the time, it still felt overpriced. Like, I feel like every deal does. There's only been like a couple deals. Yeah, there's only been a couple deals where I'm like, this is a good deal. All the other of the 40 something, they're all like, oh man, this is a lot. And then in hindsight, it's like, man, that was actually a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So you always feel like you're overpaying. And just briefly on that, how you get around that, I would say, is definitely talk to other people that are doing what you want to do, whether it's parks or anything else, and get their opinion, someone that's already doing it, on what they think, if it's a good deal or not. But so anyhow, back to these two deals, mostly park on home. We took it over, had to evict several of them right away. He had pretty bad collections. He was using a third-party manager, which I don't recommend. And evicted those people. The ones that owned their homes, we ended up selling the homes to them for a pretty decent price to them, very cheap. And yeah, so now they're fully occupied, all tenant owned, direct build. They do their own mowing. So those parks are awesome. And I've refinanced one of those parks twice since buying it, which again shows you the hindsight. Seemed overpriced at the time, but got a good deal and really pushed the values and made them really nice communities.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that was, the first, our first park. I literally got brought into this deal, and you may have heard the story before, like 7 days before closing with a partner. I didn't get a chance to do any due diligence. So it was a mess. It was a mess. And so I totally understand the park owned home thing, because that's what my first park was. And it's not easy. I can't imagine, people come in and people have, they haven't paid in 2 years, and they get mad at you for evicting them. Like, what? It just doesn't make that much sense, right? But so just looking at that, like, so you got to 2,600 lots from that park. So what year was that first acquisition?
2019.
2019. And
yes.
then so here we are in 2023 with 2,600 lots. So I guess because I'm sure you're a completely different person now from the 4 years ago to now. What did you have to change about you personally, or even from a mentality standpoint, to actually get to that scale? Because what I've learned, that it was different owning 100 lots. It was much different owning 500 lots, definitely different owning 1,000 lots, and then getting up to 2,000. It's a whole different ballgame. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the first thing I would say is, if you're trying to build scale, you're not going to be able to get above a couple hundred lots unless you look outside your backyard. At first, I was very concerned about managing these long distance. And what the light bulb moment for me was, I owned a park that was literally 15 minutes from my house. And I owned this for a little while, and 6 months would go by and I would never visit it. And I was like, okay, if I'm able to own this, and it might as well be on the other side of the world because I'm never there and I'm still able to run the park, then I can do this anywhere. So that's when I really started looking far away. And as far as just on scale, the other big thing with that is you have to have help. And that's, hiring people and building. For me, it was building a management company and having the right people in place to scale that up. Because for the first few hundred lots, I was self-managing.
Yep.
And that'll burn you out pretty quick. Someone told me that mobile home parks, everyone wants to buy the park, no one wants to manage it. And it's the same with, with babies. Everyone wants to make the baby, no one wants to raise them. So same thing. So the first hire for me was, I hired on-site managers in each park, and it was burning me out because they would be calling me, talking to me, and all my day was just talking to these managers. And I love them all, and they're great, but they just would talk to you hours about nothing to do with the property. Hey, did you see that movie last night? Or, hey, what are you doing this weekend? And and again, I like them as people, but it was just taking all my time. So my next hire was hiring a district manager just to be the in-between between me and them. And so just what I'm getting at is, you have to rely on other people, and the more you can automate, the better. We use software called Rent Manager that automates most of the rent collections.
Yep.
Post late notices, it can send them out reminders, it tracks all the phone calls coming in. So as much as you can delegate, whether that's to software or to people, you need to do that in order to really scale. Really successful people, they're not doing their own accounting. They're not taking all the phone calls that come in. You have to delegate. And the way I look at it, because that always bothered me, I'm looking at this, let's say it's a $50,000 position. I'm like, I really want to spend that much money. But if you are paying them $50,000, but they're making you $80,000, I mean, how many times would you do that? So, right. And really, the way you look at it is, it's not permanent. Like, let's say it doesn't work, and you don't feel they're bringing you enough value. Well, it's not like you're paying them the whole $50,000. Let's say it's for a 3-month trial period. After 3 months, you can get rid of them, and you've only paid 1/4 of the $50,000, $25,000.
Right.
So that's really the key to me. You cannot do this without having good people and good systems, and don't be afraid. And I feel like every hire I make is too late. Like, I'm always really stretched, and I hire the next person, and then it's like so much better, and I wish I'd hired them a year ago. So I would say just, really focus on delegating things, and that's how you can really scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many lots were you at when you finally took the leap for the district manager?
That was about, I would say, 800 or 900.
Okay. Okay. So you self-managed essentially all the way up to 900.
Correct. And again, it was to the point where all the day long I was doing nothing but dealing with the managers, and I couldn't grow anymore. And so then I made the next hire to then continue on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome, because that's a point where people tend to get stuck. We grew to 500 lots, or 400 or 500 lots, really fast. And I was self-managing with some help, and we bootstrapped it there. But then we made an acquisition that took us to 1,000 lots. It was a portfolio in one park, and everything blew up. Everything broke. All the systems, everything broke. So we had to start sort of changing things. And so, as you had mentioned, and I would tell people this as well, whenever you think you need to hire someone or whenever it gets too much, you should have made that hire earlier. And I'm guilty of the same thing because you don't want to spend the money or do, you know, same thing. So you're at 2,600 lots now, and I know there's lessons that have been learned because you start in business and there's usually some turning points and some ups and downs. So what are some lessons that you've learned? Or let me word this better. If you could go back to the 2019 Abraham and give that individual some advice now, what would be some of that advice that you would, hit that guy over the head with and give to him with your experience now?
Well, one thing, and this is just a market cycle thing, but everything I looked at back then was pretty much a deal. You know, and so I would have probably, because up until now I've not raised any money. Everything's either been about half of what I own is myself, and the other half I'll have like one business partner that's 50%.
Yep.
So I probably would have raised money and taken on larger deals. But I would say, with every deal you miss out on, there's a lesson you learn. And one lesson that, I only want to learn it once is if you're looking at a property and everything checks out, good location, all the metrics, and they throw out a number to you, the seller, just take it. Just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to give you that, because I've lost out on, in fact, it was two. So it was very painful because I made the same mistake twice and never again. But where they threw out a number to me and I countered them with a lower amount, which may have been more of what the property was worth, but I could have made it work at their number, and they end up selling it to somebody else. So I would say that's one lesson that really sticks out. Another lesson is, that old adage, location, 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 and it's kind of silly, but it's really true in parks as well. Location with parks, like it is with, I think, probably every asset class of real estate, can fix almost anything else. And just for example, the one things it can't fix are obviously like an illegal park or environmental contamination, but the demand is so crazy that you can, rents can go very high. So you have a lot of park-owned homes. You can convert those easily, because even if the people in them don't want them, you'll find 50 other people lined up, or someone wants to pull out their home. Well, all right, see ya, because we got more people lined up to come in.
Right.
And just as an example on that, I have some parks, and this is a pretty hot area. I was talking to the manager one day because she was selling like 2 or 3 homes a week, and these were cash, like mobile home. We'd sell for 20 grand cash, and we just couldn't. As soon as somebody left, because these are all parks, are all rentals. Every time somebody left, instantly we would have somebody ready to buy it for 20, 30 grand cash.
What market? What market was that in?
This is around Knoxville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. And I talked to the manager, and I said, "How are you doing this?" And she told me, she said, "Listen, I've sold homes with dead animals in them." And I said, "What?" She said, "We had one that we had evicted, and they ran off, and somehow a raccoon or I think it was a raccoon got in the home and just died. And we didn't even clean it up. We sold that home, I think, for 12 grand, and just as is, and they knew it. They looked inside beforehand, and they said, all right, yes, we'll take it. So, so really demand, I have some parks in Nashville, and I've sold homes that in a weaker market, I would have just torn down, but we've sold them for, 9 grand cash, and they'll come in there and they'll gut the whole thing and make it look brand new. But I mean, they probably spent, 15 grand doing that. But just because there's such a housing shortage in some of these really hot markets, you can get this crazy type of demand. And plus, again, lot rents are just on the rise, really all across America. But in these hot markets, it's unbelievable. Like we're at 600 plus in Nashville right now.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's there's still room to run in this business, I think, and we're going to keep looking for deals. So what's your opinion of the market now? I know since rates have gone up, and every broker in America called all the park owners in Florida and told them that they could get 140 a pad for their 14 lot park. And so all these owners went to the Bahamas in their mind of what they could get to their park. And so now pricing is a little off. So what's your opinion of that? And what do you think some of the upcoming opportunities are going to be in the market?
I feel like you're going to see some people that overextended and really overpaid for some properties. Those are going to come back around, just because, I mean, they may have bought at a variable debt at the top of the market, and their interest rate now has almost doubled.
Yep.
And then they're not meeting, they were planning on exiting at like a 3 cap. And, now here we are where rates are at 8 and cap rates have went up with that. So I do feel like there's going to be opportunity there. And then also some sellers are just the silver tsunami, as they call it, every day. I think it's 10,000 baby boomers turn 65. The original mom and pops of this industry are aging out. They are wanting to retire, sell this, and again, like I said, retire to the Bahamas or go wherever, and they're selling. So one thing that I've seen a lot of recently, more so even than in the past, was seller finance properties. Last year, when rates started going crazy, in the last quarter of last year, I had 4 parks I was buying, and they were all cash deals. Well, my rates I'm getting quoted started going from 4% to 5 to 6 to 7, and I went back to all 4 sellers, and I got all of them to seller finance the properties. 2 of them did the whole thing. Yeah, the other 2 did finance seconds, and then the bank had the first position. But my point out with that is, for some of these sellers that are still wanting to get prices from early 2022 or 2021, seller financing is a great way to bridge the gap there. And then otherwise, just tell them what, or better yet, bring a term sheet from a bank or just a quote saying, listen, this is what I'm getting, and then just list out all the expenses, and you can go over it with them. This is what I'm budgeting for this. Is that correct? Yeah, that's about right. And, they may self-manage, but you're going to have to hire a manager. So you got to put that in there. Same with lawn care. And then show them what the net income is and then what you're having to borrow at. And you cannot make it work. You cannot buy parks at what they were selling for in 2021 and make any money. You can't get a loan.
Right.
And they really are. They're understanding that now. Like I've been. There's definitely a lag between when rates start going up and when they start adjusting their expectations. But that is happening now, and which is good because that's healthy, and that the market's balancing itself out. So I would say it's business as usual. I'm still calling people every day, talking to them, following up, understanding their situation, when they want to sell, when they plan to sell, and So I mean, just stay at it. There's deals in every market, up and down, and you gotta find them.
Yeah, for sure. So you're still, when you're running acquisitions, you don't have like a team. You're basically just running that, doing the calls yourself, finding. How does that actually look on your end?
Sure. So right now, 3 days a week, I'm doing acquisitions. 2 days a week, I'm still in the management company.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to get it really to 5 days a week in acquisitions. And what it looks like is really just me calling people. I call them up and talk to them, and I'm real straightforward. And I'm like, hey, my name's Abraham. I own some parks. Have you ever thought about selling your park?
Yeah.
And they'll tell you pretty quick, whether they want to or not, or, and most people are, it's definitely regional. Like in the South, people are a lot more friendly than parks, maybe up north. But even there, most people are pretty friendly. And just like we were talking about earlier, it's, skills that carry over with insurance. They can tell me no 50 times, or people can yell at you or cuss at you, and it doesn't bother me at all. You can't let that bother you.
No.
And really, one thing that I keep in my mind is there are people out there right now that want to sell, and you are solving that problem. You're calling them up. Hey, listen, do you want to sell? Yes, I do. I would love to sell. So you're just trying to find the people that do want to sell. And you're going to have to wade through all the people that don't or aren't ready to get to those people to help them. But really, it's not like we're calling them up to sell them things. We're wanting to give them money. So don't, call up and take your shot. It's not, they can't hurt you over the phone.
Yeah. No, for sure. That was one of the big takeaways for me from insurance when I started cold calling park owners. I'm like, dude, this is great. Like, I'm calling to give them money this time.
Yes.
It was completely different.
Yes.
And so that
One thing I
one
want
of
to
the
mention as well,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you there,
No,
but
go
as
ahead.
far
Go ahead.
as this other advice, other advice I give myself is, you reminded me of this with insurances. I wish I had went into this full time earlier on.
Mm,
As soon as I had really enough parks, which really was only like, I would say, after the third or fourth acquisition, I could have lived off of the cash flow from those. I should have immediately stopped doing insurance and went into
mm,
parks full time. I did both simultaneously up until 2 or 3 years ago, and I feel like it really held me back because, as much as I loved insurance and I love saving people money, there's more money in parks. Like,
yep.
hands down, there's more money in real estate, and it's easier, which is crazy to me. Typically, you think, oh, if I'm going to make more money, I'm going to work harder and longer hours. But no, it's easier now than when I was doing insurance, and the money's better, and you actually have an asset you own. So yeah, that's the other advice. If you're somebody that already has a couple properties, maybe, or once you get to that point, you haven't started yet, but once you start buying, really look at, as soon as you can, leaving your job and going into this. Because I mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? Let's say you work a normal job, a W-2, and you quit to do this. What's the worst? You're going to go get another job. You already have that now.
Yeah.
So just take the leap. And everyone I've talked to, every single person, I probably asked this question to 20 or 30 people that have wanted to do real estate full time. All of them wish they had done it sooner.
Mm-hmm.
They all hold on and they just keep going because the income is steady every month. And they all, looking back, once they go in full time, man, I should have done this, a year ago, 2 years ago. So that's just one other thing I wanted to mention about advice I would have given myself from back in 2019.
Yeah, yeah, and I would agree. Hindsight is 2020, right? I would have did. Yeah, I agree. I would have did the same thing. I would have gotten into this full time before, or even started doing it before, and then stopped. I didn't waste 5 years of my life in my early 20s. I wish I would have, not even went to college really, and just found a guy like you or someone else, and like, hey man, I'll work for $10 an hour. I just want to learn how to operate these properties and learn the business, whatever, right? So if I could go back, I would totally do something like that. I would probably find the richest guy in town, for whatever he's doing in real estate, business acquisition or something, and sort of figure out a way to latch onto that and learn. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
and so one of the things that I love talking about, we're in this crazy business of trailer parks, mobile home parks. So the stories are just, I mean, I've got tons, right? So what are you, I want to hear one of your craziest stories of a situation that happened in a mobile home park.
Hmm. So this is one of the ones that come to mind. Uh, Again, I visit a lot of properties. I've probably been to how many? I don't even know how many hundreds of mobile home parks, if it's not in the thousands at this point, because I'm in them all the time. Every week I'm going to look at parks. And I was in one park in West Virginia, and driving through, usually I'm taking photos if I'm looking at buying this park. And so got my phone, out my window, taking some photos. And there's this one guy working on his car. Didn't even know he could see me because he's under the car. He's got colorful flags put up and stuff. All right. So anyhow, I'm going through and circle back. I start coming back out. I'm going real slow. He starts yelling, "Hey, what are you taking pictures of?" And he starts running towards my car. So naturally, I pull up my phone and take a photo of him running at me, and then I speed out of there.
Do you have the photo?
Oh. I need to find to locate it. It's on one of my older phones, so I do have that photo. I got to find that because it's such a funny picture. But I'll find that photo and send it to you.
That's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah, the stories
and
and
then
go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say another one. I was in this one park and it was a little bit rougher, and I always like to, when I'm driving through, I'll ask some tenants there what they think of the park. My go-to line is, "Hey, I'm looking for a place for my grandma to rent.
Yeah.
How much is the lot rent here? What do you think of the park?" And I asked this one guy, and I said, "Hey, is this a pretty nice park?" And he looked at me and said, "Get used to fireworks and gunshots." So like, okay, maybe I don't want to buy this.
Yeah, right. So when we were in Vegas, you told me a story about where you went into the guy's house with the gun. Can you please do you mind sharing that story? 'Cause that is-
I'd be glad to. Yeah. So this was actually one of my first managers in a park, and he'd been asking me. Again, I've owned this park now since 2019, so 4 years. And this happened a couple of years ago. So he'd been asking me for a couple of years, "Hey, I really want to show you my gun collection." That was he was big on guns, and so one day I was all right, sure. I was in the park, so we go in his mobile home. He's sitting on his bed. I'm standing up, maybe a couple, 3 or 4 feet from him. He's got this rifle, and he's kind of showing it to me. He's got it pointed right above my head. He's showing, look at this, gun. He's telling the story of how he bought it, and then the gun goes off, and I'm so disoriented. My ears are ringing, like, what the heck just happened? Because it went off right by my head, went over my head, through his roof, and I'm standing there, and he's mumbling something. Oh, I don't know what happened, and then it goes off again. He pulls the trigger a second time, and shoots again over my head. And at this point, I said, "Put the gun down." And so he puts it on the bed and puts his hands up like this. And then I think I sat on the floor. I was still, my whole head was spinning, and like, what the heck just happened? And after a couple minutes, I get up, and I remember he said, "Oh, I better go." He said, "You got to go. I got to get on the roof here and patch it before my wife gets home." So yeah, that's the last time I've been in his mobile home since then.
I don't know if I've heard one that can top that one. I mean, I got some good ones, but that one, and look, I'm glad you're still here, Abraham, and you're able to talk with us. And just for listeners, maybe you have parks or you don't have one yet, just be prepared. I would tell you to go by as many parks as you can, but just be prepared for the craziness that you're going to see, the things that you're going to happen that don't make sense, because you could sit here and dream it up now, and you still couldn't come up with some of the stuff that you actually see in a park. So,
And then maybe the lesson there is, wear a Kevlar helmet before your manager shows you his gun collection. Or just don't.
Or just don't go. Just don't go.
Yeah, just don't go. Better advice.
So, what is the kind of closing out here? What is your next, like, what's next for you? What is the next level for Abraham? Like, what is your mind on today, that you're trying to get to next?
Sure. So, I often ask myself, like, where do I go from here? I mean, it's a certain point, you don't really need to keep growing. You don't have to keep buying parks. I could, if I wanted to, I could, maybe make one more hire and then step back to the management company and then don't have to do anything. But when I really sit down and think about it, I enjoy this. Like, it really is fun to me. The acquisitions is fun. Talking to people is fun. Making properties nicer is fun. And so what my goal is right now is just to really delegate all the things I don't like, which really is working in the day-to-day of the management company, and focus on the parts of the business I do like. So I'm going to keep doing this until it's no longer fun. I don't plan to sell any parks, really. I want to just hold these, and then hopefully in 30 years get my or before then, really get my kids in the business and leave it to them, and then just keep it going, hopefully. But I'm going to keep doing this until it stops being fun, and then I'll maybe go travel or something. And I'm traveling now. Like, I do go places, but again, this is fun to me. So if work is fun, why would you stop?
Yeah. No, I agree. And even my parents and people, they're like, you work and you're on the go all the time. And I'm like, what else would I do? Right? What else would I do? This is fun. Like, this isn't work to me. Like, business is fun. Making deals, looking for deals is fun. Like, dealing with the problems that come up. I thoroughly enjoy that. And, I always explain it to people. I'm like, well, what is your hobby? Oh, riding my motorcycle. So this thing of business is my riding a motorcycle. Right. So,
it's funny because, like, when I was a kid, I used to play video games some, and this one game was called Fable. You could buy rental property in the game, which I thought was kind of funny. You could buy it, and you could, if you put gold in the house, like, and improved it, like you invested gold in it, you could get more rent. And if you did this long enough in the game, you got to the point where you owned like half the town, and you just had all this money coming in. And so, I mean, that's why I look at life. Really, it's just like a video game.
Yeah.
I have the experience bar, and I'm doing these things and getting the XP as high as I can. And so, again, it's just like a big video game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you completely. I used to like playing games you couldn't beat, like Sim City, Sim Theme Park, or Sim something that you could just keep growing and growing and growing. And I have the same thought process and mindset as you. Like, this is a game, it's fun. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what we're capable of. Because, a lot of people, I think we're all capable of way, 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 way more than we're actually doing. And I believe that a point, like, what we're put here for, whatever that is to just like see how much we can actually do. And, I've seen, you've heard people that are, on their deathbed, and they're regretful. It's the last thing I want to happen. So I'm going to take as much action as I can now, and boom, and get to the next level. Well, yeah, Abraham,
Absolutely. And just real quick on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I want to make one point about what you just said. I read this book about people. It was a lot of interviews with people that were, basically on their deathbed. And the takeaway I got from that book was the majority of regrets people had were always things they didn't do. It's, chances they didn't take, or experiences they didn't have. Just so it's really, inaction is really one of the worst things you can do. Take action, take the chance. Even if you fail, at least you tried, and just try again. And eventually you'll be successful. And when I remember when I was doing insurance, I was 18 or 19, and I was walking in a Walmart, and there was a greeter there, and he was a super nice guy. And he must have been 90 years old. And I'm thinking, man, I really don't want to still be working a job when I'm 90, unless I want to. But I mean, even though he was nice, I'm sure there's things he would rather be doing than greeting people in Walmart at 90. So that was, to me, like, okay, I want to, just like we talked about, I want to scale something up where if I don't have to work, I don't need to. There's a quote from Warren Buffett that says, if you don't learn to make money in your sleep, you'll keep working until you die. So I was always conscious of that. But again, if it's fun to you and find something you enjoy that you can make a lot of money at, then every day's you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing on that too is that, like, sometimes the things that we really, really love doing aren't necessarily the things that are going to make us money in the beginning, because I hated the insurance business. I hated cold calling, like, for insurance, because I didn't really believe in the product. It just was not. But I feel like I had to do that and get through that in order to get through and finding something that I love. If you're a guy who's stuck right now and you're like, I don't know what to do, just start and do something, right? Start and do something that you can gain a skill in. Like, even if it is selling insurance or working in a call center, you'll learn how to cold call people. And I'll tell you, that's a super valuable skill. So look, Abraham, I appreciate you coming on to the MHP show, man. I'm sure we'll have you on again at some point. And when I get this in-house studio built out here, I'll have to have you in person for an interview. So everybody, thanks for tuning in to the MHP show. Abraham Anderson was on shooting us some knowledge here. And so until next time, guys, peace.